Okay, so we did a lot of that. And
Is that where you met your beloved?
no, I met my beloved. I went back to Ireland in 1964. I was supposed to go on the SS America, but my father got ill, and I flew back. My cousin, one of my cousins in New York, was general manager of American Lines at the time. And he said, buy a economy fare, and I'll see you get first class treatment. You know. So, but I did come back on the SS America, and I met these two young ladies there, and we had a drink together. And I was at the captain's table almost every night. I think I was there every night for dinner, and they were there one night, and I talked to them again. And then the last night in New York, we were supposed to dock, and it was postponed until the next morning. And an Irish priest said, "Come on over to my cabin, we'll have a party." So I met her there again, and it was crowded. We went outside and decided we'd keep in touch, and that's what we did. We flew back and forth.
So she was living in New York?
She was living in Boston.
In Boston.
Yeah, in Natick, Mass. Oh, jeez, I shouldn't say the name. Because a lot of those people are still living.
Oh.
Because the history became very rough after I got married.
Oh, I see.
Very, very bad.
I see.
And 1982, I sued for divorce.
I see.
And it was a very, very long divorce. Like 11, 12, 13 years long.
I see.
Biggest in the history of Massachusetts.
I see.
In volume of action by the court.
I see.
So I got custody of my kids, and a couple of them were kind of grown by then.
Yeah.
And so two of them came out here ahead of me, and then I came out in 1992.
Oh, so you actually settled with her back east?
No, I was here first for 14 years until I met her.
Ah, I see.
And the deal was when we got married, we were going to live here.
I see.
But as soon as we got married, she started crying for her family.
I see.
And it became to such a point, I said, it's not worth it, you know. So I moved back, everything.
Yeah.
And I had a beautiful building on Pine Street, 19 units, that I owned with a friend of mine. And sold that at a bargain, unfortunately. And I knew I was making a huge mistake, but it was intolerable. So anyway, we had 4 kids, in spite of all the bad feeling. That's what people say to me. How could you have 4 kids? But so now my oldest daughter still lives in Natick, Mass, and she has a degree in art from Tufts University, but she has a daycare center. That's what she does for a living. She's married and has a couple of kids. And my second daughter Emily lives in San Francisco. She's a journalist. And my son Joe, he's the third. He is art director for a company in San Francisco called Les Concierge. He does a really good job. Caroline, the youngest, went to school in Heidelberg and Freiburg. She got 2 degrees there, and then a degree from some business university or college in Berlin. And she does translations for universities and drug companies and people like that. And she is married, and she lives in Constance, down on Lake Constance, right on the border of Switzerland. And she's doing great. I was visited her 2 or 3 times. Yeah, so it's everything's been good. And Emily, Emily's done very well, but journalism jobs aren't that good. She's very well paid for journalism, but that's an exception. But she was in England for 8 or 9 years, and she wrote for the Financial Times, just 1 or 2. One was a big article, half a page, and for the Wall Street Journal in Europe. And she worked for a new Far East TV station. They were ultra-modern everything there. And then they went kaput. So then she worked for the Surgeon General of Britain, or the Chief Medical Officer of Britain, as an editor. Then she came back here, and now she's got this journalism job for the Pink Sheet, a drug magazine or whatever it is.
You by the way, you mentioned, going back to Ireland. You still do on occasion. What do you? How did you feel? You sort of made the move here. You've been actually all over the world. How do you feel going back at this stage in your life? How do you feel when you visit?
It's very nostalgic.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And you mentioned you run into somebody and they had some great stories in your last visit.
Yeah.
Who was that person that you?
Her name is. Should I give her name?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Mary Clifford. Wonderful stories. Story you wouldn't hear anywhere else.
Yeah, and she's back in.
She's back in Ballingarry.
Ballingarry. Yeah. And what kind of stories did she?
Oh, gee.
Talk about things.
Unfortunately, my memory is terrible. It really is awful, especially for near things.
Yeah. I understand.
It was truly, it was like an old Irish party of 50, 60 years ago.
Yeah, amazing.
Just this one person talking.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, and I'm going back in a few weeks, and I bought a little recorder, and I'm hoping to get together with her again. It would be priceless to have it anywhere. It was unusual.
Did you, to jump back to your own life, your sister Kay spoke about growing up on the farm.
Yeah,
and how you used to, for example, you were around a lot of other large families. Families, and you would share work when harvest time came.
Oh yeah.
Other people would come and. Yeah.
Everybody did that. Yeah. It was nice. It was a very nice thing to do. Yeah. I don't have many pictures. I've got one small little picture showing us sitting down, one neighbour with a bottle of Guinness. Usually gave the neighbours Guinness on those occasions. Yeah. And the same thing with when it came to picking the potatoes in the fall.
Yeah.
Everybody would get together. And,
so you'd have 30 people out there.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. But one thing I wanted to mention, I don't know if Kay mentioned it, but the neighbours, reading, what's that guy? Enter the Road, Enter those Ashes.
Oh, McCourt?
McCourt, yeah. You kind of got the feeling of a lot of uncharitable people.
Yeah.
But most of our neighbours, and I'd say this is pretty universal around there, were good people and charitable.
Yes.
For instance, small farmer or even big farmer sometimes, for milk in the winter, they would have what they call a stripper. The cow, they call it a stripper. And that cow, for some reason, didn't give milk in the ordinary time. I don't really know the technicalities of it. So you would have her for milk, your own personal milk, during the winter. And once in a while, the cow gets sick and die. And without asking, nothing said, you'd find a bottle of milk on the doorstep the next morning, and for every morning after that. It wasn't for a day or two or a week or two. They knew your need, and they moved to take care of it. It's a wonderful thing. And we had one Protestant family living very close to us. And I don't know if Kay told you about them.
Yeah. Yes.
And she, the mother, Mrs. Bennett, bought my first communion suit. And took the pictures.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I still have it.
Yeah.
And when my father would get sick, she'd come across the fields with soup and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
They were wonderful and fun as well. They were out to the hunt with all the big wigs, but they were wonderful. When my my brother Tom, too bad he didn't live long enough for you to interview him, but he liked to make fun of them, to them. And they were gathered in the parlor one day after the hunt, and Tom was there, and they were discussing their favorite meal, the greatest meal they ever had. And you know, they were in Paris, they were London, they were all over the place with these exotic meals. And they said, well, Tom, what's your favorite meal? And he said, cough lozenges. Oh my God. Hold on a second.